Hey folks, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us. Happy Friday to everybody out there watching. It's great to be with you. My name is Paul Harrell, and this is the Millstone Report. We got a great show for you. We're going to talk about the Democrats. We tried to do this earlier in the week, ran out of time. We're going to talk about the Democrats' push to try to get back the young men. They're supposed to spend like $20 million to do that or something. We've got that. Also, some new developments in the FBI case. Kash Patel saying that, a couple of weeks ago that the assassination investigation it has been closed in at least one of those cases. And yet, some people have tried to, because it's closed, Freedom of Information Act requests certain FBI files. And now they're saying no, there's still stuff ongoing. So people are wondering what's going on there. Also have some interesting, an interesting piece that's going to tie into everything that we're going to talk about today from J.D. Hall over his blog Insight to Insight over the phrase, quote, no homo, end quote. We'll talk about that as well as Glenn Greenwald. I think you're going to see how things are going to kind of weave together today. Glenn Greenwald obviously issuing a statement. We'll have that for you. There's been somebody that's released a private video of him and intimate, doing intimate sexual things, and so we'll cover that story. But we're going to start with something that this is the first thing that popped up in my X feed this morning, and I thought I'm going to have to cover this because we do know that the Trump administration has put out at least one of their objectives is to eliminate anti-Christian bias from the government. Obviously, if that happens, it will also trickle down into all kinds of different aspects of our society, eliminating this anti-Christian bias that we all know is so rampant. The left wants to claim it doesn't exist until, of course, Pete Hegseth holds a prayer service at the Pentagon, a voluntary prayer service, and then the anti-Christian bias in the media really comes out when that happens. They're for everything under the sun, anything you want to do, but be an open, unashamed Christian who proclaims that Jesus Christ is Lord. That is a bridge too far. That's too offensive. The exclusivity claims of Christianity, of course, historically, have always been offensive to a pagan culture. But so we're going to start here with this headline. The founder of a publication by the name of Western Journal, I'm sure many of you have read their pieces. The guy's name is Floyd Brown, and so recently he was tapped to come work underneath Rick Grinnell over at the Kennedy Center. Of course, Donald Trump is trying to de-wokeify the Kennedy Center. We covered a month or so ago about how a lot of pride celebrations had been canceled from the Kennedy Center. Of course, we're all, girding up our loins, no pun intended, for June. The next time I do a show, it'll be June the 2nd, Monday, June the 2nd. So Pride Month will have officially kicked off. It'll be interesting to see what major corporations do. Have they realized that if you go woke, you go broke? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is there's a report that Floyd Brown was fired because of his traditional Christian Orthodox beliefs that marriage is between one man and one woman. Not surprising. That's what Christians have believed for thousands of years. And that's, and even before, the time of the church, that's, of course, I think that, Christians are, the church are all people throughout all biblical history, all believers. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's go to this story. And here it is. Western Journal founder fired from Kennedy Center. So this is from the Western Journal. I thought it was appropriate to go ahead and the founder of the Western Journal. So we're going to talk about this from their perspective. Christian fired for rejecting gay marriage. That's the way I see this. Now, it is important to note that this is a report. The Kennedy Center does not deny that Floyd Brown has been fired. They claim that his side of the story is not the truth. So it's possible that there's another side of the story that we're going to get later. But as of this broadcast, I'm going to report what is the apparent truth based on Floyd Brown's own testimony. So Randy DeSoto, writing CNN, is taking credit for prompting the firing of the Western Journal founder and former owner Floyd Brown, who only a month ago had taken a senior position at the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts. The piece by CNN's Andrew Kaczynski describes Brown as a far-right activist who is a professing Christian and who's made statements in the past critical of the homosexual lifestyle and same-sex marriage. Now, that is true. He has. We have that for you here in just a minute. The Bible identifies engaging in homosexual sex as a sin in multiple passages, so Brown's views are certainly mainline Christian teaching. The very first chapter of the Bible in Genesis records, quote, "So God created in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them." It adds regarding marriage in chapter 2, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Interestingly enough, there are some what are called pre-fall mandates. Marriage is one of those, work is one of those, and rest is one of those. Interesting that those things carried over. Obviously, work is a lot harder this side of the garden. Marriage is a lot harder. That's part of the entire that's part of the curse. And rest, by the way, is even harder. So here we go. Here, Jesus it goes on. Jesus affirmed this truth in the New Testament by quoting from the Old, saying, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." In February, President Donald Trump announced that he was naming Rick Grinnell an interim director at the Kennedy Center. The president wrote on social media, "Rick shares my vision for a golden age of American arts and culture and will be overseeing the daily operations of the center. No more drag shows or other anti-American propaganda. Only the best. Rick will welcome to show business." In other words, no more woke. That's what Donald Trump said about this. Now, Grinnell has been a Trump loyalist. There's no question about that. Dating back to his first term, he was acting director of national intelligence. He was also the ambassador to Germany. And by all appearances, he's acquitted himself well, according to the Western Journal here. He's a communicator of Trump's America First agenda. But he's also gay. Rick Grinnell himself is active homosexual and has married, quote, married another man. The piece goes on, "I imagine most MAGA supporters are like me, holding to a libertarian view that adults should make their own life choices, and if he performs his official duties well without discriminating against those who hold different moral views, that's what matters." I mean, yeah, if you're a libertarian, that is the mindset. I think there was anti-sodomy law in Texas that didn't get overturned in this country since, I guess it got overturned in 2001, 2002, something like that. Interestingly, that in the founders' vision, laws like that weren't considered to be unconstitutional. But I digress. However, in his decision to fire Brown, that does not look to be the case. Brown posted on social media, over on X, quote, "I was fired yesterday by Rick Grinnell from the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. 1 month ago, I was recruited to join the Kennedy Center as a vice president. My firing came approximately 2 hours after CNN sent an email asking me to comment on my past writings and statements about traditional marriage and homosexual influence in the GOP. Brown further noted, "Comments rooted in my personal Christian views, which I made in the past, have no impact upon my work here at the Kennedy Center, nor do they impinge on my interactions with colleagues who do incredible work for the patrons of the center. As a Christian, I am called to work with others of different beliefs and worldviews." The piece goes on, "Jesus Christ certainly did not force anyone to believe that he was the Son of God, nor in the biblical truths he spoke about marriage or anything else. Societies, through their governments, must make decisions about all manners of moral issues like marriage, transgenders in sports, locker rooms, etc." Brown goes on X, "I asked for an explanation of my dismissal, and I asked to speak to Rich Grinnell. Both of those requests were ignored." CNN reported, quote, "A source familiar with the Kennedy Center confirmed to CNN that Brown is no longer there and said that Grinnell had not met with Brown, did not know him, and was not involved in his hiring." Brown further noted over on X, "The only explanation is the one given to me at the time of my firing. Floyd, you must recant your belief in traditional marriage and your past statements on the topic, or you will be fired. Needless to say, I refused to recant and was shown the door. My beliefs are much more common to biblical Christianity." So we have Floyd Brown here saying that he was told by somebody that his previous comments about gay marriage and also homosexuality in general and the influence in the GOP. And again, I have those clip. We're going to watch that here in a minute. He's saying that they wanted him to recant that or he'd lose his job. Again, this is just a report. There's probably another side of the story, almost guaranteed to be, but this is disturbing, especially if you're talking about a situation where the goal is to eliminate anti-Christian bias. What else would it be? I mean, what other? This would be a perfect definition of anti-Christian bias. The Western Journal reached out to the Kennedy Center for comment and received an email response denying the accuracy of Brown's post without specifying what was untrue and directing the Western Journal to the CNN story for further background. That's pretty weak. The Kennedy Center needs to go on record and say why they fired a prominent Christian in the MAGA movement. Ironically, Braun wrote a best-selling book in 2023 titled Counterpunch: An Unlikely Alliance of Americans Fighting Back for Faith and Freedom, filled with MAGA views about the border, education, trade, reindustrializing America, and etc. So what they're saying here is this Floyd Brown here has been very much working with the within the MAGA movement, putting forth ideas, et cetera, that are beneficial to it. Real quick, before we go any further, this part of the program brought to you by Red Vive Health. We'll tell you about the healing power of red light here in just a minute. So the Western Journal goes on to say Trump knows the pivotal role Christians played in his reelection. Shortly after taking office, he issued the executive order titled Eradicating Anti-Christian Bias. So does this go against Trump's executive order? If this is true, and Rich Grinnell, of course, they're saying he denies hiring him or having anything to do with his firing, but somebody at the Kennedy Center, if that's true, but somebody at the Kennedy Center, according to Brown, is, I think, in violation of Donald Trump's executive order. Wonder who that could be. Here's his full statement over on X. One second, let me fix my X account here. So, yeah, he says he was fired yesterday. He says, comments rooted in my personal Christian views, which I've made in the past, have no impact upon my work here at the Kennedy Center, nor do they impinge on my interactions with colleagues who do incredible work. Now, it could be something as well. With the Kennedy Center, we're talking about fine arts. We're talking about the performing arts, which naturally, well, I don't know about naturally, but modernly attracts a lot of people who are gay. And maybe they just couldn't handle having somebody who believes that marriage is between one man and one woman. Maybe they couldn't handle somebody who has, really outed the GOP. One of the things that Floyd Brown says, and this I think is the comments that got him in trouble with CNN, is that he says that one of the reasons that Republicans just continue to give us excuses on family issues for decades is because Republican staff, they put young staffers on there who are gay. A lot of Republicans, according to him, have staffers who are gay. And one of the reasons he says, well, I'll just let you hear it. One of the reasons he says is because they don't have families, so they can work basically 24/7. Here's a clip from Raw Feed that has the clip of Floyd Brown, and this is what he said. Listen.
Which I never talk about. So when I was on Capitol Hill, I worked in Republican staff. And what most people don't understand is that many of the Republican members have homosexual staff. And the reason that they do is because the homosexuals, usually, unlike me, I had 2 kids at home, I had a wife at home, I had responsibilities at home, and I needed to spend time with my children. And they don't. They didn't. They literally worked for the member 24/7 and then went out to Adams Morgan and had their gay sex and then came back to work the next day. And so inside the Republican Party, inside the RNC, it was President George W. Bush who appointed a chairman of the RNC who was openly homosexual. His name was Ken Mellman. Okay? And they went through the RNC and systematically filled it with homosexual staff. And that's why we never make any progress on family issues. You know, activists at the local level, we wonder why aren't our Republican members of Congress fighting for traditional marriage? Well, because they've got 3 staff members who are against it, and that impacts them. And it's a dirty little secret that nobody wants to share.
So presumably those are the comments, or at least some of the comments that CNN questioned Floyd Brown about, and then of course CNN also was going to question the Kennedy Center for their story, and yada yada yada. That man was fired, and again he says he was told that he had to recant those views if he wanted to keep his job. The only explanation is the one given to me at the time of my firing. Floyd, you must recant your belief in traditional marriage and your past statements on the topic, or you will be fired. Thankfully, Floyd Brown refused to recant and was shown the door. I think back to that great talk that Steve Deace gave about the greatest 2 commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, spirit, and love your neighbor as yourself. But what we cannot do is take the love your neighbor as yourself and supplant love the Lord your God. You have to do the first one first, love the Lord your God, and you can't not love the Lord your God at the expense of loving your neighbor, because really and truly it's not actual love at that point. It's distorted, and it's essentially just useless virtue signaling at that point. So it's good. I think Floyd Brown, if this story is accurate as it's being presented and reported today, I think this is really, really good of Floyd Brown to stand on his convictions, and I think it's very shameful that he was fired over this, especially when we have, in the midst of an administration that says we want to eliminate anti-Christian bias, and if he was really fired if it all went down the way he said, this has got to be fixed. I think he needs to be reinstated, and he needs to be reinstated quickly. And the Kennedy Center needs to explain exactly why they fired him. So share this story out. I think this needs to go everywhere we can, far and wide. Now, on that, I want to talk a little bit about this other report that popped up in my X feed the other day that I think needs to be discussed. There's a new Gallup poll out that is showing that Republicans, the support that Republicans once had for same-sex marriage has plummeted. Brian Metzger writing, support for same-sex marriage among Republicans has dropped 14 points in the last 3 years, according to Gallup. The question they were asked, do you think marriages between same-sex couples should or should not be recognized by the laws as valid, with the same rights as traditional marriages? We see in 2021, you had Republicans. Let's see. I see it's over 50%, almost 60%, 55%, and now in 2025, the results have plummeted to 41%. So they have lost 14 points in a matter of years. Now, the question is, why is that? And I think the easiest explanation for why that is because people are recognizing the slippery slope is real. People are connecting the data points, and I would say the data points, align on a slippery slope. And I think the fact is this country has been completely turned upside down since Barack Obama put a rainbow in the White House after the Supreme Court in Obergefell said that there was a constitutional right to marriage, stripping the states of being able to regulate it themselves, which is insane. I used to take the libertarian view on this, but I think it's completely, this was a long time ago. I reject that. That theory now because I see where it leads. It leads to kids being taken to drag shows. It also leads to. It has led. I mean, we've gotten sicker and sicker and sicker. We have become a more wicked as a society, really on steroids since the rainbows was projected up on the White House. It leads to transing kids and calling it health care, and doctors, and this priestly class of our day with their white coats look at us with a straight face, and they tell us that we need to remove the breasts of a 13-year-old because she's sick and this is for her health. It's absolutely insane. And I think most Americans are charting this back to acceptance of just wide acceptance of homosexuality and homosexual marriage. It just is what it is. A case in point, I mean, we're going to talk about Glenn Greenwald here in just a minute, but, long time ago, if any reporter had been outed as gay, let alone had their, sexual deviancy on display for people to see, their career would be over. Now, people may not like that, but that's just the way it was. And it's like a lot of these secular people, they have a problem with transing kids and calling it healthcare. They have a problem with men competing in women's sports. They have a problem with all of these things, but they're not willing to recognize what led to this. This didn't just happen overnight. This was a slow progression that was sped up after the Obergefell decision. And this is why many Christians think certainly spiritual warfare is real, but the spiritual components to the highest court in your land essentially saying, homosexuality is not only permissible, but, at this point, what we hear from everybody is that it's preferable in many cases. Regardless of what the CDC statistics show, regardless of what this actually does to your health, and regardless of the fact that as a human race, we actually need more children, not less. And the whole idea that we're overpopulating the earth is a complete myth. We need more people, not less. We need more families, not less. And then it leads to men masquerading as normal families. It leads to gay couples masquerading, adopting kids from surrogate mothers. All of that is because we've normalized this other behavior years ago that used to be considered wrong. Used to be considered something that was wicked, that was evil, that was wrong, something you did not do, because we were informed by the Bible. We were informed by Scripture, which is why we have Western civilization in the first place, and we are sitting here living off the derivatives of that, and it's on fumes, folks. We're living off of the fumes of the great men before us that didn't call evil things good and good things evil. So this is a positive in that there are people in the GOP who kind of swallowed this libertarianism, swallowed this live and let live idea, but they're seeing that, but it's not live and let live. This has a direct implication on me and my family, and the way I live has a direct implication on public schools that are essentially, generally speaking, no longer safe to send your kids to because they're going to be indoctrinated with the rainbow. People are saying, I believe the reason it's plummeted in 3-4 years, 14 points among the GOP, is because people are realizing that the conditions on the ground in our culture today are directly related to accepting wickedness as normal and good years and years ago. Here's the Gallup report on it by Megan Brennan. Headline: Record Party Divide 10 years after same-sex marriage ruling. A decade after the Supreme Court's millstone Obergefell versus Hodges ruling declared same-sex marriage a national right in the U.S., a steady 68% of Americans support it. Since 2021, the percentage of U.S. adults who think marriages between same-sex couples should be recognized with the same rights as traditional marriages has ranged from 68 to 71%, the trend high in 2022 and 2023. Yet, this stability in Americans' backing for same-sex marriage masks shifts in partisans' views over the same period. Democrat support has risen to 88%, a record high for this group by 1 percentage point. Independents' backing for same-sex marriage has been relatively stable in recent years and currently stands at 76%, 1 point shy of the record high. And at the same time, Republican support, which peaked at 55% in 2021 and 2022, has gradually edged down to 41%, the lowest point since 2016 after the Obergefell decision. So this is noteworthy. And again, I think it's because people are connecting the data points, and they see that all of these are connected. Transing kids and calling it healthcare didn't just spring up all of a sudden overnight. It was because of the sexual deviancy that was happening in adults and was accepted in adults. And where does it end up? It ends up viewing everything through a sexual lens, including children who are not sexual at all. But we have this obsession, psychological obsession, where, and I think this is very much true in the LGBT enclave, because everything about you, the most important part about you, is who you want to sleep with. You look at a child who isn't sexual at all, but you have to ascribe to them some sex, because that's all you know how to identify a human being is. All you know how to identify as a human being is about sex. So it's the most important part about you. So we're going to project that onto young kids and let them know about, make them read books about how, some kid has two daddies. Orrin McIntyre writes, the whole, on the news of this, the polling news, the whole why do you care about what we're doing in the privacy of our bedroom kind of ended when drag shows for children became the primary goal of the movement. So yeah, I think this is right along the lines of what I'm thinking. Why do you care about what we're doing in the privacy of our bedroom? So people started waking up when they realized that not caring about that, whether you agree with the conclusion or not, there's many people like me that do, not caring about that has led to parents thinking they have the right to take their kids to a drag show for kids so that, perverted people can dance in front of the kids and expose them to this way of life, this debauchery. I think that's when many people started saying, wait a second, okay, live and let live. Was live and let live ever real anyway, though? Because if you actually look at the seething that's going on right now because Pete Hegseth had the Christian prayer worship service at the Pentagon. I mean, there's two faults in the live and let live idea when it comes to social norms or society, the culture wars or whatever. It's that I don't think the other side ever really meant it for Christians, right? Everything's good under the sun unless it's Christian. So I think that's the first flaw, is it was never really a two-way street. It was never really it was only live and let live for people who are wanting to change society from its Christian foundations. And then the second thing is, it simply doesn't work. We don't live on an island, and so the live and let live progressively gets worse and worse and worse, and eventually it comes for your kids. That's why you have these small towns that, it'll be basically the small towns, a lot of small towns in America, the month of June, you never know what you're going to see on your main street. So it's like, okay, well, I guess all the Christians who don't want their kids to be exposed to all of this rainbow stuff. I mean, the half-naked or fully naked men over in California last June. You remember Taylor Hanson's reporting all of that, and how you just couldn't believe that the police wouldn't do anything about it. Our decency laws being openly violated. That's exactly right. All right, so now we get to Glenn Greenwald. So Glenn Greenwald has been, some people think it's blackmail. It could be. Glenn Greenwald, I will say this about Glenn Greenwald. He's gay. He is, the first I heard of Glenn Greenwald was Edward Snowden. He was working for The Guardian then, I believe. He was the only journalist that would, I think he flew to China or somewhere over in the East after Edward Snowden fled the country, after Snowden revealed the surveillance state to everybody, and it was incredible. And of course, now we've seen that same surveillance state be weaponized against the American people, weaponized against people like Donald Trump. It was an incredible thing that Glenn Greenwald did, and so I'm not talking about Glenn Greenwald's journalistic bona fides. He certainly has that, and he has contributed a lot to anti-war reporting and that sort of thing. It's exposing the flaws in our foreign policy and everything else. But anyway, he writes, last night, videos were released online depicting behavior in my private life. Some were distorted and others were not. They were published without my knowledge or consent, and its publication was therefore criminal. Though we do not yet know exactly who is responsible, we are close to knowing, and the motive was a maliciously political one. So he's saying it's essentially an attempt to silence him for his perspective in his journalism. He goes on, as for the content of the videos, I have no embarrassment or regret about them. The videos depict consenting adults engaged in intimate actions in their private lives. They all display fully consensual behavior, harming nobody, he says. He goes on, obviously, it can be uncomfortable and unpleasant when your private behavior is made public against your will. That's why the behavior is private in the first place. But the only wrongdoing here is the criminal and malicious publication of the videos in an attempt to malign perceived political enemies and advance a political agenda. Others are, of course, free to form their own judgment, as some are prone to do about others' private lives. It won't change my work, he says. I will continue all the many prongs of my journalism and pursue the causes most important to me exactly as before. Okay, so that's his statement. Now, I haven't seen the video. Last night, as I was scrolling through X, I saw that it was trending. I saw some still shots. I have no interest in seeing this video at all. I will say some people's takes on this, I think, are right in that, well, you know, maybe some of the advice here is in the digital world, in a world that is just so, you know, everything's being recorded all the time. We know that. There's an NSA data center in Utah that reminds us of that every day. Maybe you don't need to film yourself doing things like this. That would just be the most practical first point. Maybe you don't need to actually film yourself doing intimate things. Here's this meme going on with Tony Soprano saying he uncovered massive government surveillance is what he did. He defended President Trump against Russiagate, and in this house, Glenn Greenwald is an alpha male. End of story. Of course, he's not an alpha male. Jared Taylor Swift writes, you see stuff like this Glenn Greenwald video, and it's obvious that all these gay dudes are complete slaves to their unnatural perversions. It's not a happy lifestyle. These people are deeply sick. So, yeah, there's, multiple takes on that. Let's stop right now. Before we go any further and talk about this, I want to tell you about Red Vive Health and the folks over at redvivehealth.org/Paul. So red light panels, we've been telling you a lot about them. They do everything personally, too much information. Here, speaking of personal information, too much information, not quite to the level of Greenwald. But I had eczema. Red light panel cured the eczema that I had. It's incredible what this red and near infrared light does, producing collagen, the near infrared light penetrating deeper into the body, reaching your bones, muscles, tissues, even your organs. So you can experience scientifically proven anti-aging technology, improve skin health, reducing wrinkles, reducing color patches, hyperpigmentation, skin discoloration. But it does so much more than that externally. The stuff that it does internally is incredible, stimulating the mitochondria of your cells, which is what makes cellular respiration possible. I want you to give them a try. I want you to give them a call at 866-726-8483. Mention my name, Paul, if you call the number, 866-726-8483, so you get the discount. And then if not, you can go shop and do your own research at redvivehealth.org/Paul. That's redvivehealth.org/Paul. Next week on the Millstone Report, we're going to be talking with Dr. Raul Desai. He's going to be back with us, telling us even more about the incredible benefits of red light therapy. This is a way for you to get something that Big Pharma does not want you to have. They don't want you to have these clinical strength red light panels in your own home because it's going to keep you off of their hamster wheel of drugs and becoming a lifelong customer or slave. Dare I say slave? That's what it feels like to me. redvivehealth.org/Paul. That's redvivehealth.org/Paul. So in keeping with our, we're discussing degeneracy here, essentially. I mean, that's kind of been the whole show, starting from the firing of Floyd Brown to rainbows on the White House to the GOP support for gay marriage tanking, and then, of course, this Glenn Greenwald thing. It's kind of wild, the tapestry of news stories that were out there today that kind of tie everything together. But here's another one. The Minnesota Supreme Court has ruled that female breasts are not lewd or inherently sexual and can be exposed in public. Now, here's my question, and related to everything that we just talked about. My question is this. If gay marriage isn't legalized, if gay marriage isn't considered normal, does the Minnesota Supreme Court, out of the blue, without that first happening, rule that women's breasts are not inherently sexual? And the answer is clearly no, in my opinion. Because I think the slippery slope is real. And we gradually descend into nothingness. I mean, the reason why, the whole point of feminism was you have to have a patriarchy in order for feminism you got to have something the feminists are going to fight against. But you get all the way to the apex, the zenith of feminism, where women can murder their own children and no one else can. And then all of a sudden it's like, here's the switch. Actually, there's no difference between a man or a woman at all. We're all just androgynous, chemicals that come together and react, and then we die, and everything goes into nothing. And so if that's the case, and we have some Starship Troopers shower scene like Utopia ahead where men and women and their naked bodies don't mean anything anymore, there's no distinctions between men and women, then the ultimate goal, which is satanic, is to just say something so ridiculous like this, that female breasts are not indecent. Exposing nudity is no longer a problem. Minnesota Supreme Court, female breasts are not lewd or inherently sexual and can be exposed in public. In overturning a Court of Appeals decision, the state's high court examined whether or not a woman simply exposing her breasts constitutes conduct of a sexual nature. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. Well, Dale Partridge writes, it's now legal for women to be topless in the state of Minnesota. To claim that breasts are not inherently sexual in a culture that has topless strip clubs, companies like Hooters, and magazines and websites dedicated to exposed breasts is an incredible lie. Breasts are sexual. Modesty is good. This will make Minnesota worse. He's exactly right. It's absolutely insane to think otherwise. And for thousands of years of human history, women have covered themselves, especially in the West. And that's why when Western civilization would come upon a savage culture or some island primitive culture where the women weren't covering themselves, it was a big issue, right? It was one of the reasons why you had missions to proselytize the savages, to teach them things like modesty. Obviously to teach them Christ first, but you get the point. So Joshua Hames writing, this is profoundly evil. To the women who would expose their breasts to children in public and to the legislators who made it legal, our Lord has a warning for you, Matthew 18:6. Whoever causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Obviously, that verse, and I think the other one in Mark, is the reason, kind of the whole undercurrent, no pun intended, of this program and why we call it the Millstone Report. Is because of that. So yeah, it is incredibly evil, and it makes no sense. What's funny is you just look at how in this country we used to have decency laws. We had decency laws. I was talking to a man here in my home state of Arkansas. He's an older gentleman, and he was telling me about small town Arkansas. This would have been back in the 70s and 80s. And all of a sudden, the gas stations in small town Arkansas were flooded with pornography. The bookstores were flooded with pornographic magazines. And the bookstore owners were being told by the distributors that you can't select. Think about how insidious this is. You can't be selective in what you order. You either get all the magazines in our catalog or we won't sell any of them to you. Well, so they were, as part of their lineup, these distributors, they had Playboys or whatever else. Well, come to find out, there weren't any laws that needed to be passed. There were already laws on the books, but you had small town and medium town Arkansas prosecutors who were not willing to do anything about it. And so, it was even recounted to me a story. this man who was very much, a Christian and offended by all this and knew what a scourge this is to society, he took some of the materials that were free, like flyers that were pornographic, and went to the prosecutor office himself, pulled out the code, said this is illegal. And the prosecutor got smart with him and said, okay, it's illegal. You have it. I'm going to arrest you. I'm going to charge you. And the guy said, with confidence, arrest me then. Arrest me. Because if you arrest me, you better go arrest those people too. And so there was some back and forth, and eventually it didn't stop until this man started bringing pastors from large churches in those cities to these meetings with the prosecutors. And then all of a sudden there was actual movement, and for the most part, with a few exceptions, these store owners realized that they were being lied to by the distributors, that they in fact did not have to take the entire catalog that include pornographic magazines. And at least for a time, again, remember, this is way before the internet, things were a lot better. But you see, the slippery slope is real. Stuff like this just doesn't spring up from the ground. It's a progression. And in this case, the culture is getting worse and worse and worse. And somebody like an Andrew Isker, who left Minnesota, was right to do so with this kind of stuff now being said, is good. Calling evil things good and good things evil. Modesty is actually good, by the way. And then we see where it ultimately leads. Speaking of Minnesota, Champlain Park, Minnesota just shut out the defending state champions in back-to-back games to win Class 4A Section 5 softball. Both victories came behind the arm of somebody called Marissa Rothenberger, a biological male competing in girls softball. Before we go any further, I want to remind everybody that this portion of the program brought to you by Curable Premium Health. Go to curable.com, promo code Paul20 for their great CBD products, and we'll tell you more about them here in just a moment. Just look at this. Look at Marissa, quote, Marissa Rothenberger.
And the pitch. Rothenberger back in the fifth. Swing and a miss.
I mean,
he
pitch. Is just bringing the heat.
And the pitch.
Look at this.
Rothenberger back in the fifth. Swing and a miss here first. 0-2 pitch. Struck.
So this went on. Back-to-back games. This biological man played in both games to win the championship. And again, all of this is related to Rainbow in the White House. And even before that. We've got Gabriel Wrench saying the crowd watched 14 innings. Now think about this. What would you do if you were in the crowd? What would you do? Could you sit through this? The crowd watched 14 innings of this and did not say a thing. Of a man on the pitcher's mound, or softball mound, or whatever, and just absolutely destroying the competition because this is a biological male. Biological male generally is going to be faster than an average girl, going to be stronger, going to have greater bone density. And this is where we are. Pretty incredible. Which brings me to this next piece by J.D. Hall. No homo. If you're offended, consider it a suggestion. So I didn't even realize this. I knew this used to be a thing back in the day. Back in the day for me, I don't know. It could be anywhere between 5 and 10 years. I don't know. I'm stuck. I'm at the point where I'm 40, but I keep thinking that I'm 25. Does that happen to anybody? Like, I mean, I know I'm not 25, but anyway. He writes, Christians that are too busy being offended by the phrase aren't taking the time to be encouraged by it. So there's this, among the Zoomers, they're saying no homo a lot. He writes, the world's gone mad. J.D. Hall over at Insight to Insight. The world's gone mad. And a simple phrase like no homo is enough to make some Christians clutch their Bibles and cry foul. This phrase isn't a sin. It's a window into a generation fighting a culture that twists every act of kindness into something it's not. Far from crude, no homo, is a quiet rebellion, he says, a sign Zoomers haven't fully bowed to the world's rainbow agenda. Let's unpack this with reverence for God and a raised eyebrow for the overly pious. So, the origins of No Homo. J.D. Hall writes, No Homo emerged in the early 2000s, born in the gritty world of hip-hop and African-American vernacular English. It's a verbal tag slapped on after a statement that might be misread as homosexual, like a guy saying, my bro's got style. No homo. To clarify, the affection is platonic. It came from a subculture where hypermasculinity was king, and any hint of ambiguity could spark judgment. It's raw, unfiltered, but honest, a product of its environment. Etymologically, it's straightforward. Homo, from homosexual, paired with no to shut down romantic implications. Its roots trace to the 1990s with early whispers in rap lyrics, but it exploded with artists like Cam'ron and Lil Wayne, who used it to navigate a culture where clarity was currency. By the mid-2000s, it spread from black communities to urban youth, and the internet becoming a staple of slang. It's not about malice, it's about drawing a line in a society quick to misinterpret. For those who've missed it, maybe you've been off the grid. No homo is a cultural marker from a time when men felt pressured to guard their words. Christians, who know the world is fallen and language gets messy, should understand this. It's not a psalm, but it's not a curse either. It's a tool to express brotherhood without being mislabeled, born from a context we can't ignore. Let's not faint over a phrase. Let's see what's it really saying. Today, he writes, no homo is often a half-joking disclaimer kids use when their words might be taken the wrong way. A teen might say, you killed that game, bro, no homo. Or, I've got your back, no homo, to show support without inviting misinterpretation. It's not just slang, it's a necessity. Homosexuality is so normalized, so aggressively pushed, that any same-sex kindness can be mistaken for romance. The LGBT community loves to twist platonic bonds. Look at David and Jonathan. Their covenantal friendship, 1 Samuel 18, 1-3, is spun up as a gay love story. Or Jesus and John, the disciple whom Jesus loved. Suddenly, it's a queer romance in their narrative. Obviously, that's all disgusting twisting of Scripture. I'll add one thing further. Frodo and Sam and The Lord of the Rings. Everybody loves to try to make that into some sort of homosexual relationship that's clearly not there. You can actually have genuine love for a brother that's not romantic or sexual. He goes on, this is why no homo exists. Young people want to express love. They want to give compliments or stand by their friends, but they're forced to clarify because the culture's obsessed with sexualizing everything. A guy can't say, you're my brother, without risking a smirk. It's a sad reality, but it's real. The phrase is a pushback against a world that can't see affection without a label. Christians should see the heart here. Kids craving authentic connection, not the distorted lens of a hypersexualized society. Instead of scolding, we should nod at their effort to keep things clear in a confused world. Zoomer's rebellion, a sign of hope. He ends his piece, J.D. Hall, over at Inside to Inside by saying, Christians fretting over no homo need to look deeper. So I didn't even know there were Christians that were upset by this, but I'm not surprised. The phrase isn't the problem. It's a symptom of a generation fighting back. Zoomers grew up with drag queens at library story time, pride-themed blues clues, and rainbow flags in kindergarten. We thought they'd be indoctrinated, but many, especially the boys, are angry. They're rejecting the LGBT narrative with a boldness that puts Gen Z and millennials to shame. No homo is a small but real sign their consciences are marked by God's law, Romans 2:15, are still alive. Again, that's Insight to Insight. J.D. Hall has an excellent blog there. I would encourage everybody to subscribe to it because he's got some great work here. Generally, though, what I said at the top of the show, this is a sign that everything is seen through a sexual lens today. Everything is seen towards a sexual lens. And it got projected from adults that see the best part about them, the most important part about them, who they are, is what their lusts. Their lusts define who they are. And that's a lie. Well, I mean, if you're I guess your sin does define you in many regards if you're not found in Christ. But they take that warped view, rejecting the concept of being created in the image of God, which we are, and then they say, okay, here's a child who is not sexual at all. And of course, yes, their movement depends on new converts, very much so, because they themselves can't procreate. They're not procreating. I know they're doing the surrogacy thing, but for the most part, one of the reasons the schools are so infected with this rainbow and trying to sexualize kids is because if they don't get new converts from normal couples, their movement will die out in a few years. I think they know that. Moving on to some FBI news. So FBI Director Kash Patel told Fox News last week, according to Ken Silva, that its investigation into the July 13th Trump assassination attempt was closed. So Ken Silva says, when he said that, I immediately filed an FOIA for all FBI interview reports from its investigation, and today I was denied that request on the grounds that the case is still open. Headline USA reporting, FBI denies request for records on Trump's shooting, even though the director says the case is closed. Fascinating. There's a pending or prospective law enforcement proceeding relevant to their responsive records, and release of the information could reasonably be expected to interfere with enforcement proceedings. So that is interesting. That's given us way more questions than answers. Is the case closed or is it not? If it is closed, why do you not want to release it? If it truly isn't closed, then is there something that we don't know about? I don't know exactly. Whoa, hello there. Folks, before we go any further, I want to take a quick break. I want to tell you first about Jace Case. So the great folks at Jace Case, I'm proud to partner with them. They are incredible, and they actually they did this because of COVID. So with COVID, you had all the supply chain breakdowns. Remember that? And so you had all the supply chain breakdowns, and then we had, the pharmacies. And of course, right now, the pharmacies, many of them are still, trying to jab as many people as they can and that sort of thing. But if you go to jace.com, JASE.com, what you will find are the ability to get Jace medical kits, different kinds. They've got parasitic cleanses. They've got just a basic one where you get like some steroids, antibiotics, and that sort of thing. So you can have it on hand. You can keep it in case you need it. Of course, this is all, doctor supervised. When you go to jace.com, you want to use promo code Paul, P-A-U-L. But when you go to jace.com, what you'll see is a very quick, easy questionnaire. They want to know your name, your age. They don't want to give you any antibiotics that you may be allergic to. Some people are allergic to penicillin. Some people are allergic to sulfa. And then everything's, easy. And then at checkout, you use promo code Paul, and you'll save some money. I want you to check it out. I've got an ad I'm going to play, and then we'll be right back here in about 60 seconds.
Life can be pretty unpredictable, filled with good days and not so good days. And sometimes, the only difference between the two is your level of preparedness. The Jace Case lets you be better prepared for whatever comes your way. It contains antibiotics and other prescription medications so that you aren't caught unprepared. With a Jace Case, you are able to get your prescription medication before the unpredictable happens, allowing you to turn those not so good days into great ones. Go to jace.com now and get your own Jace Case.
So remember, when you do that, you want to use promo code Paul, P-A-U-L. Also want to tell you about the great folks over at Curable. Curable Premium Health, Premium CBD for your health. If you've never tried CBD, first off, you need to know, CBD is incredible at things like reducing inflammation in your body. There's even studies about what it can do for your heart health, blood pressure, and you need to research all of that. Do your own research. If you've never had CBD and you're taking ibuprofen every day for chronic pain, or you're taking aspirin or Tylenol or Aleve, I'm not saying that there's no place for NSAIDs, but honestly, folks, I know in my life I've taken way too much of them. They're not good for your digestive system and things like that. But CBD, you actually have a cannabinoid receptor system in your body. So think about it. Get CBD from Curable, and you're not only going to get the most potent CBD for the money, you're also getting stuff that hasn't been treated with harmful pesticides and chemicals, because the folks at Curable oversee everything from the growing to the extraction, and then they get it third-party tested to verify all of their claims. They've got great stuff like the muscle cream, which is good for external use. Great if you're a tennis player and you have like tennis elbow and stuff. The CBD is incredible. The cream is great. Then if you got sleep problems, they're really good, too, for getting you to sleep. They put some melatonin in there as well to keep you to sleep. I want you to give it a try. Go to curable.com. That's Kuribl.com, and use promo code Paul20 and save 20%. Okay, here we go. We've had this story for, I don't know, a few days now, but I keep running out of time. Not sure why. Breaking, Democrats have engaged. Somebody called, don't know who this lady is, never heard of her. Somebody called Olivia Juliana. Olivia Juliana is part of their strategy to bring young men back to the Democrat Party. This is who it is. For those of you who are listening to the audio-only version on Apple or Spotify, you may want to Google this lady's name for yourself. She is obese. I mean, there's no other way to say it. She's obese, and just remarkably so. And so this is an odd spokesperson for this. I have a little clip here. Eric Daughtery, left-wing Democrat activist Olivia Juliana, announces the party's new strategy to go after young men. She says that most conservative young men are pro-Black Lives Matter, pro-abortion, and support gay marriage. She says that they're with her on the issues. Originally, this is from Libs of TikTok. Listen.
The reason why Republican messaging resonates with men is because men want bad things, right? So like men want to have sex and like own women, right? Like they want to dominate everybody, and Republicans say you get to do that, and then Democrats can't say that. So we just lost men, it's over, right? Like, What are you talking about? Like a lot of times it will be men that are liberals who will like agree with that shit. I'm like, dude, what is going on? Like there's a lot of men that don't think that way, obviously, and it's just such a negative view to take on like half of the human race.
Well, I also think it's just so abundantly clear that the people who say these things don't actually spend time talking to young men. You know this because we know each other in real life, but I spend a lot of time on college campuses, and I spend a lot of time with
young men.
I love young men. I love frat guys, and in that I realized like even the ones that identify as conservative are almost always pro-choice. They're almost always pro-gay marriage. You'd be surprised at the number of them who supported Black Lives Matter. And so I feel like people just kind of lump them into this box when the truth is, again, a lot of them are with us on the issues. They're just not part of our coalition because they feel like they're not welcomed in it.
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly don't know about the Zoomers coming up, but I don't think this. I don't think this strategy is going to work. Recruiting young men back into the Democrat ranks. Megan Basham has a really good video. She writes, really good video illustrating the problems Dems are facing with young men.
The President of the United States.
The U.S. President is Donald Trump.
Yeah. So speaking of frat guys, I don't know. I'm not so sure. Got a little update on the court situation. The Supreme Court, in a 7-2 decision, allows the Trump administration to end temporary protections and work authorizations for more than 500,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, pending a court challenge. Sotomayor and Jackson dissent. So this is an instance of Larry Schweikart pointing out Amy Coney Barrett actually voting with the right side, and John Roberts for that matter. Michael Cassidy, the Christian hero who ripped the head of Baphomet statue, ripped the head of a Baphomet statue over in Iowa. He's posting the McDonald's Trump photo. Supreme Court allows Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem to categorically revoke Biden-era permissions for non-citizens from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Really interesting stuff. And then here's a little white pill. We got to go, but here's Pete Hegseth giving a pep talk to the folks over in, where was this, out of Singapore, to the troops in Singapore, doing a workout with them and then giving them some encouragement. Listen.
1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 9. 3, 2, 1. 1. 1, 2, 3. 1. Down. Up. 2. Down.
are the ones that hold the line. You spend the best years of your life, your young years of your life in uniform, staying fit, staying ready, putting yourself willingly in harm's way for 330 million people who are a long way away. And I'm here to tell you that it matters a lot. We see it. We understand the challenges you face. There's 3 pillars of what we're trying to do. Restore the warrior ethos. That's part of what you're doing right here. Staying fit every day, staying ready every day, staying accountability to each other in the chain of command every day, focusing on war fighting and lethality. We're seeking peace. You can see that from President Trump. He seeks peace. He wants peace for us and our families at home. But the pathway to peace is strength right here.
1, 2,
Incredible. The pathway to peace is strength, reiterating that Donald Trump doesn't want war. Let's pray to that end and that we don't get dragged into another war. Folks, that's all the time that I have for this edition of the Millstone Report. Now's the time where I tell you that if you don't go to church on Sunday. Find a church that preaches the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ and his mighty ability to save sinners. And those of you that do go to church, have a blessed Lord's Day. Unless I'm providentially hindered, I'm going to be right back here on Monday delivering the news.
The very foundation of the Christian faith is based